Yes, the SNP leader told the party's conference in Glasgow that a draft legislation on plans for another vote will be published next week. And Nicola Sturgeon joins us now from Glasgow. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, look, you gave your delegates a crowd pleaser. They all cheered and clapped. You've put the idea and the possibility of a second Scottish referendum back on the table. But you don't really want one, do you? Because you haven't got the money to go it alone. This is just part of trying to get the best out of Brexit, isn't it?
Well, I want Scotland to be independent. I don't think there's any secret about that. But right now, and let me focus on the here and now, I'm, like many people, very, very worried about the implications of Brexit, the impact on jobs, on living standards, on the economy overall, on trade, investment, and our place in the world. And I want to try to protect Scotland from those consequences. So I've set out how we're going to try to do that. Firstly, we'll try to work with other parties in the House of Commons to steer the UK as a whole away from a hard Brexit, because I don't think there's any mandate to take the UK out of the single market. We'll also put forward proposals to Theresa May that would enable Scotland to stay in the single market, even if the rest of the UK wants to leave, to allow us to protect our economy. But if none of that works, and I can't make that work unilaterally, I would have to have the agreement of Theresa May. But if none of that works, then of course Scotland has to have the option of choosing a different path. Because when we voted in the independence referendum 2 years ago, we were voting for a UK that we thought was going to stay in the European Union and in the single market, not one that was coming out with all of these impacts on our economy. So this is first and foremost about protecting Scotland's interests, especially since, of course, Scotland didn't vote to leave the EU. We voted by a significant margin to stay in. So trying to protect us from these implications is what matters.
A million Scots did vote to leave. What about them?
Absolutely, of course. Of course he did, yes. But, well, absolutely. And, you know, I think many of them right now will be looking at the antics of Boris Johnson and David Davis, at some of the horrible xenophobic rhetoric coming out of the Tory party conference last week, and thinking, that's not what I voted for. But, you know, yes, a million Scots voted to leave, but 62% of those who voted in Scotland voted to remain. So it was a clear and decisive result. And as First Minister of Scotland, well, firstly, of course, I respect the result of the referendum in other parts of the UK, but I'm the First Minister of Scotland and I've got a duty to respect the result in Scotland, but also, and more importantly than that, to try to protect Scotland from being taken off a cliff edge economically, which I think is what we're facing right now. The UK, if it comes out of the single market, is, I think, at risk of stepping off that cliff. And I don't want Scotland to suffer those consequences. I don't want the UK as a whole to suffer those consequences. So we'll work to try to avoid removal from the single market. As I say, we'll put forward proposals to try to keep Scotland in the single market. But if all of that fails, I think it's important that the option for Scotland of choosing a better future, one where we can control our own destiny and build our own prosperity and security, does stay on the table.
Nicola Sturgeon, apologies, there is a huge delay, so I don't want to interrupt you because it's so complicated when we start interrupting each other and it doesn't serve any purpose. You want to talk about respecting voters, respecting the people of Scotland. The most recent opinion poll says that 47% are against a new independence referendum. I tweeted to a few of my followers this morning what would they think, and a lot of them have come back. This is Mags. Some certainly are absolutely behind you and saying, yes, we need another one, but Mags is saying the SNP need to get on with the job in hand, dealing with education and the NHS. Our economy is suffering at the moment, and there are big problems, as Kate was saying at the moment, with your spending deficit. £15 billion is huge, and we mean the UK, the Scottish economy is the worst performing, and actually that's the priority for many of your Scottish voters.
All of these things are priorities, and on health and education, many of the things we're trying to do. So this is about how do we protect Scotland from that. I don't pretend that, you know, taking the path of independence will be without its challenges. I'll have questions to answer. That case has to be made and it has to be won. But equally, I don't think as First Minister I can simply stand back and shrug my shoulders while Scotland, against our will, is taking down a path that will be seriously damaging to our economic interests. So this is about how I try try to protect Scotland from that. And of course there'll be a difference of opinion in Scotland and elsewhere in the UK about how we do that, and I've got a duty to try to bring people together. Actually, an opinion poll yesterday, I don't know if it's the same one you're referring to, showed that if people thought they were facing the hard Brexit that the Prime Minister appears to be talking to, a majority of people in Scotland actually think we should have the option of another referendum. So what I'm doing is protecting Scotland's ability to make that choice, if that choice
Nicola,
is what we have to make to give ourselves the best prospects for the future.
Wow, Nicola, I thought I could talk. You're giving me a run for my money. Lovely to talk to you, though. One quick question before we go. We're talking about referendums and elections, but there's a very big one going on in America, and I'm sure you, like the rest of us, are looking at all the stuff that's coming out surrounding Donald Trump, who is very invested in Scotland, feels he has a great affinity with Scotland. Are you comfortable with taking his money into Scotland after some of the allegations you've heard? Do you like the man? Would you go to dinner with the man? Where would be your line that you would draw on Donald Trump?
Well, you know, people from a variety of backgrounds invest in Scotland. Donald Trump has got 2 golf courses in Scotland. Do I like the man? I've never met him. I don't like much of, if anything, of what he says. You know, there is a rule that says leaders of government shouldn't comment on other elections. I think in this election I'm happy to break that rule. I hope that the American people don't elect Donald Trump as president. I hope they elect Hillary Clinton. I think it would be fantastic to see the first woman president of the USA.
Lovely. Nicola Sturgeon, thank you very much for joining us again. Apologies for the delay on the line. We do appreciate your time, though.